Technically, I'm releasing this second show today, but it's actually a third, considering I screwed the first one up and didn't turn on my mixer. Welcome, everybody, to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Bespris, and this show, Two Things, is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook, proud partners of our program and the entire Believe Network. And also, I forgot what the other one was. It'll come back to me in a minute. Find me on Twitter at Dan Bespris, DanBesbris. Like and subscribe. Those are all the things I'm doing at the beginning. I already forgot what the other thing was. It'll come back. I'm sure of it. I'm not that sure of it. Today, we're talking second round ADP battles. This is the most likely decisions you'll be presented with as you work your way through the second round, and who I would take in each one of those little one-on-one who do we take moments and why. Man, that's going to bug me. What the hell was I about to say at the beginning? I did FanDuel, I did the Twitter, I did the like and subscribe. What am I forgetting? Oh, right. I wanted to tell you guys that this show, Old Man Squad, is the fantasy basketball podcast that aims to simplify. That's the whole thing. I'm trying to have a new intro, and I can't remember to do it, so a lot of good that does. Is the second round the mess it always seems to be? Are there avenues to win this group? We're going to find out in a minute. We're using Yahoo's board version 2 that was released about a week and a half ago or so for our rank and ADP data. This discussion, as all of our ADP shows, is largely geared towards head-to-head, but I will throw in a comment as we're working our way through where the Roto side differs. So I'm going to try to cover both as best I can, but the default setting for these shows is head-to-head. And again, I'll make clear when that's not the case. Before we get going, I'm advising my listeners not to draft Paolo Banchero. Avoid Paolo in category leagues at this early second round price. So we're just not going to start at the dude who has basically the 13th ranked ADP because he's got no shot to get here in 9 category leagues. I don't think he has any shot to get here in 8 category leagues. He has a lot that needs to get spruced up on the category league fantasy side. Also, another preamble here, I'm advising my listeners to start the second round with James Harden. I'm not going to even put him in any of these discussions because he is my first pick of the second round. I would even consider taking him towards the end of the first round. He is even better in 8-cat than 9. He's even better than that in a punt build. We can jump into the ADPs for today's show after we skip Paolo, do draft James Harden, and our first battle is Steph Curry and LeBron James. And I know what you're thinking. What? Dan? Steph? Yes, I'm afraid so, guys. I know that his pre-rank is outside the top 20. I think it's 27 right now. But his ADP is much higher than that at 19.4. He's basically the guy consistently going like third or fourth, which I know, again, doesn't track from a numbers standpoint. But if you just line up the ADPs in order of basically assign an integer value to them, it's Paolo at 13, Harden at 14. Steph is the 15th guy off the board. However, Steph, LeBron James, who this is the first battle, Alperen, Sengun, and Tyrese Maxey all have almost the exact same ADP, 19.4, 19.6, 19.6, 19.7, respectively, for those 4 guys. So we're going to do a little bit of a round robin with those 4 guys because that's who you're going to be presumably debating between. And we'll start with Steph and LeBron. Last year, Steph Curry was number 9 in 9 category leagues. LeBron was number 20. In 8 category leagues, they mushed a little bit tighter to one another because LeBron had more turnovers than Steph did. In fact, Steph was still ahead, but more of a thin margin. Steph was still number 9, but LeBron moved up to number 12. So they were quite close. Both guys played exactly 70 games last year. Both guys were very impressive in fantasy basketball. And both guys are on the older side, although LeBron certainly a little bit older. I lean to Steph in this particular ADP battle, and here's why. The second half of last year, when Steph Curry found his, I don't know, it almost felt like he found his love of the game. Over the final 25 games, basically April, March, half of February or so, so like trade deadline on, Steph was number 4 in all of fantasy basketball. And don't get me wrong, LeBron was good. He was number 13 over that stretch. So he was on a pretty strong scoot himself, with LeBron shooting we would think, somewhat unsustainable 83% at the free throw line during that run. But number 4 is wild. And a lot of that for Steph is because he just started making shots. Not to say that Steph was having a bad shooting year, because guys that bomb away from downtown as often as Steph Curry does, there's going to be a decent amount of fluctuating in field goal percent from year to year. His career number is 47. This last year in total, he was at 44.8, but that was after being in the 43 and change range for the first half of the year. And then, as we just mentioned, up around 47 from the All-Star break on. And he's still taking a ton of three-pointers. That's always kind of been the case. The number of threes compared to his overall number of shots hasn't really fluctuated all that much. He had a very slightly, three-point shooting year by Steph standards last year at 39.7. His career, he's at 42.3. So there's all these little things you could look at and say, I mean, could this be a little bit better? There is, unfortunately, also one thing you could point at and say this could be a little bit worse. Steph had his best steals season last year since 2021, sorry, not 2001, when he was at 1.1 this year after 2 seasons where he was at 0.9 and 0.7. It looked like those were kind of tapering off and possibly vanishing, and then they came back. So that's the fear, I think, if you're drafting Steph, is that the steals go back away. He's been relatively healthy the last 2 seasons, missed a total of 20 games over those 2 years, so I'm not overly concerned about that despite the increase in age. On the LeBron side, I mean, again, I'm not betting against LeBron, but also he's almost my age, and he will also always be almost my age. And last year was sort of his lowest usage season since very early in LeBron's career. And now you've got Luka. He's the man in LA. And LeBron is still going to be also the man, but you're going to see a little bit less. You're going to see 17 point something shots per game. And sure, he might have a wildly efficient season. That's what he's done the last 2 to kind of float those numbers. I just don't see LeBron going up from where he was last year, where Steph, we literally saw him get into the early first round the second half of last year. Okay, well, if I'm taking Steph in that first battle, what about when LeBron and Tyrese Maxey go head-to-head? Because now, okay, we've got Steph out in front. What do we do with this one? And what would I do? I think I actually may have even forgotten to do a Maxey versus Steph discussion on this thing, but that would be a good little side note. This one to me is, I don't want to say easier necessarily, but I got to go with the guy who's basically 15 years younger. I just have to. There's no way that LeBron is going to be aiming for more than 70 to 72 games. And if the Sixers can kind of stay afloat at the beginning of the year, Maxey's going to be trying to play in as many as humanly possible. I think there are probably scenarios in the Maxey versus LeBron ADP battle where you go either way, depending on team fit. But you are taking age into consideration if you go LeBron over the much younger Maxey. At least with LeBron and Steph, you got a couple of old guys out there. Maxey was number 10, by the way. He was right behind Steph. His usage was certainly very high this past year because Embiid and Paul George were basically out. But there isn't really a whole lot of reason to think that that's going to change much because those dudes, Joel and PG, are probably out to start this season. So between these two guys, I'm leaning towards Tyrese Maxey. I don't think this one is as clear-cut as the last one, but I am going to go Maxey for the hope that the youth part is the winner. Now, the way that gets derailed is if Joel and Paul George don't really ever come back this season, Maxey is stuck in another sort of wasted year, and this last season he got shut down with a month to go and only played in 52 games anyway. LeBron beat him by 18 games, which you wouldn't expect by a guy a decade and a half older, but that's what happened. I think if you want, I mean, again, I think that some of this here comes down to team build. I like Maxey as a second-round guy. I like LeBron as a second-round guy. I like Steph as a second-round guy. I like all 3 of them. So I don't know that in any one of those 3 you're necessarily making the wrong call, but let's say that you don't want to take the field goal percent hit. You go LeBron. He's the better rebounder, better assist guy. Maxey is the better free throw guy. There's pretty obvious reasons why you'd go one direction or the other. In 8-cat, again, this is like part of the calculus here. In 8-cat, LeBron was actually ahead of Maxey. So they flip-flopped in ranking last season. So I really think you can't really go wrong either way. I'll say Maxey for 9-cat and for youth, but I really, this is one where I'm okay with either one of them. And while we're talking about this, if it was Maxey versus Steph, believe it or not, the more I think this one through, the more I think I'm going Steph Curry. And I know that there's the age thing there also, but I just think Steph is Tyrese Maxey with lower steals, but better rebounds, better threes, probably better field goal percent, better free throw percent. He's like an amped up Tyrese Maxey who, again, stays well ahead of him in 8-cat. They're neck and neck in 9-cat, and Steph beats him in 8-cat. So I think I'm going Steph over LeBron over Maxey in these three choices. Then it hasn't been that clear in what I've talked about so far because I've been treating Steph like he's going later in the round than he actually is. And by the way, I think he will go later in the round. As more public drafts start happening and folks start using the Yahoo pre-ranks more and their own brains less, you'll see Steph slide probably just a little bit. The other player I talked about in this round robin was Alperen Sengun. LeBron versus Alpi is sort of like if I went Maxey over LeBron and I went Steph over Maxey and Steph over LeBron, this has to be the final battle. And this one to me is an easy one. This is LeBron from me to you. LeBron was ranked way higher than Sengun in basically every format you could come up with last year. Alperen was down near the top 90 in 9-cat ranks. Obviously, if you're punting free throw, he jumps up to a 4th rounder. LeBron James, if you are punting free throws, he stays in the 2nd round. He actually moves up like 2 slots. If you're punting turnovers, that moves Sengun up into the late 3rd, early 4th. But LeBron, as we talked about, moves into the 1st round. If you're punting free throws and turnovers, it just feels like whatever build you're coming up with that helps Sengun, it also helps LeBron. And he's just been better. So I'll go LeBron in this one, and I don't think that we need to think too much about it. Let's go to the next kind of chunk of players in this ADP battle in the 2nd round, and that's Evan Mobley and Jaylen Williams, who admittedly it's not like Mobley is way behind those other guys we just talked about, but he is pretty reliably going after them. Side note, the Cavaliers season win total is 56.5 over at FanDuel Sports. If you're thinking about going Cavs on the season win total, you're going to have to go for a very high number. I think Cleveland has a little bit of a step back this year after a giant last season because they're going to focus a little less on the rigors of the regular year and try to gear up for the playoffs just a little bit more. So that's at FanDuel Sports and our partners at the FanDuel Sportsbook. I lean to the under on the Cavaliers season win total. But it's not because I dislike Evan Mobley at 20.8. I think this is a very reasonable spot to get Evan Mobley. I also think this is a very reasonable spot to get Jaylen Williams because they finished 23rd and 24th in 9-category leagues last year. Neck and neck, and they're neck and neck again in this one. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that Mobley and Williams, I think, are the 19th and 20th guys typically going in drafts. Again, if you just assign an integer value to the ADPs as you line them up and say, oh, well, who are you in line? Mobley is 19th, Jaylen Williams is 20th. That's because 3 guys in front of them are out for the year, maybe 4. Dame was in front of them. Halliburton, Kyrie, Jason Tatum, they're all in front. So those guys moved up 4 slots basically because of injuries to the guys in front of them. And then, Paolo jumped in there as a, hi, everybody. Like, he jumped over a bunch of dudes. Mobley and Jaylen Williams are both very good picks at this spot. And that's actually my assessment of it. Again, to me, this one is really all about statistical need on your team. Mobley is going to win the rebound and shot block and field goal percent battle. Jaylen Williams is going to win the 3-pointers, scoring, assist, steals battle, probably free throws as well. As I talk it through, it sounds like there are more reasons to go Jaylen Williams. But at the same time, Mobley only played 30 and a half minutes per game last year because the Cavaliers were dunking on everyone. What if he has to play 32 minutes per game this season? Does that push Mobley up enough to where he belongs then ahead of Williams? I mean, maybe. I think personally still I prefer Jaylen Williams. I think with Mobley, you cluster your value into a tighter number of categories. The slightly higher, it's close, but the slightly higher turnovers of Jaylen Williams, I'm also not particularly worried about. So if you flip that over to 8 cat, then Jaylen is, they're pretty much still neck and neck, but they both slide down the board a little bit. Jaylen Williams down to 26, Mobley down to 30. So Jaylen Williams has a little bit of an edge on him there. They're still almost, in lockstep. I also think too, as we look at Evan Mobley, does the 73% free throw hold? I don't know. Does the 2.5 defensive stats hold? Probably, but it's not a guarantee. This is one of his higher per minute defensive stat rate seasons that we've seen out of Evan. I think he probably holds somewhat constant if you're trying to predict what somebody's value can do. Whereas with Jaylen Williams, I would argue there's a little bit of room for him to actually get better. You think about the fact that he shot just 48.5% from the field this last year and only 70 or 79 all round percent at the free throw line. He was at 81% at the line the year before that. He was at 54% from the field the prior year. And yeah, he took more shots, he took more threes, all that, blah, blah, blah. But we don't need, even a small field goal percent uptick pushes him back into that mid to second round, possibly even early second round if there's more than just the tiniest little uptick. And with Mobley, I think we've kind of seen the max out. So I'll go Jaylen Williams between those two guys. But those two guys are definitely the next two dudes that I'm drafting. Hands down, one before the other, but then after you get past Jaylen Williams, then it's got to be Mobley. The next two guys that I would probably draft in some order are Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant. And I know that sounds crazy that I'm jumping over a few guys, the guys that I'm jumping over being Jalen Brunson and Scotty Barnes in ADP, but that's because those guys are not the next two dudes on my list. I'm just telling you guys that right now. I don't need to do an ADP battle between them, although we'll do one here in a second. But I wanted to put the two guys that I would consider first, even if their ADPs are not the next ones lined up. Again, if we put them standing in queue, those are not the next two guys that I'm going to talk about. So Donovan Mitchell at 23.3, Kevin Durant at 25.6. Both of these guys, in my eyes, are lined up for better seasons than last year. Although with KD, the field goal percent at 53, who knows if that suffers going to Houston where he's not going to have Devin Booker. Still, 18 shots a game feels like kind of the bare minimum for KD with the Rockets. He's going to get a lot of shots. He's going to get a lot of free throws. Yeah, he's old, but he doesn't talk like he's old. He doesn't play like he's old. He has that spindly body. That's the thing that you always worry about with Kevin Durant. But man, I look at KD this year, and because he's so good at both percentages, then every little bit of usage for him is a positive, a big positive. There's nothing, everybody's turnovers go up a little bit as their usage goes up. But sometimes you'll have a guy who's, good field goal percent is counterbalanced by a slightly negative free throw or something like that. KD's just good at everything. You give him the ball another time per game, and his scoring, threes, assists, field goal percent, free throw percent, all that stuff is extra positives into his value. You just keep feeding the machine. It's this locomotive. I think Kevin Durant could be a top 8 fantasy player this year. And think about it from a 9 cat per game standpoint. And by the way, his turnovers were not good, and his assists weren't that good either. Those might also go up. But who really, from a per game standpoint, is ahead of Kevin Durant this year? Jokic, Shea, Wemby, Anthony Davis, Luka. Those are about the only ones that I can point at and go, those guys are almost definitely ahead of Kevin Durant. No one else on the board I can be like, he's definitely ahead. Cat was ahead of him last year. I don't know if that repeats itself. Steph and Tyrese Maxey were ahead of him last year. I think he probably passes those dudes. I think he passes all three of them. So don't be surprised if Kevin Durant is like number 7 or number 8 in fantasy battle, although Kawhi is going to be up there this year too. It's going to be a big year for KD. It's also going to be, I think, a good year for Donovan Mitchell, although everything for Donovan was down this past year. Was that because the Cavaliers were walloping people and he wasn't needed as much? Or is this, did we have an explosion of Donovan the prior 2 years with the Cavaliers that's now not going to carry over? Field goal percent was back down around his Utah number at 44 this past year after 48 and 46 first 2 seasons in Cleveland. Free throw number was down at 82, which I think is probably going to be a bit higher this coming year. Assists, rebounds, steals, minutes, blocks, all down this past year. With a few extra minutes, it's possible that some of that stuff starts to come back up again. And perhaps the minutes go up if the Cavaliers play slightly more competitive games and Darius Garland out to begin the season. So I think Donovan pushes back up the board. I don't know that the steals get back up to 1.8. I do think he could get to 1.5 if the minutes are back up to 33, 34, 35. The rebounds, the assists probably inch back up a little bit as well. Hopefully the field goal percent does. So he has top 15, top 18 kind of upside. He is younger than Kevin Durant, but has also had some issues staying healthy over the years, not quite to the same degree. And so when you roll all of that together into a delightful little ball, I like Kevin Durant. So what about then if you passed over Donovan Mitchell? Would you take Donovan Mitchell over Scottie Barnes is the next one? Because Barnes, and I don't want to repeat myself too much because I've done a bunch of shows recently where we've talked about Scottie. We did a Raptors breakdown. We talked about some of the guys that I'm looking at and where they go. And the main thing for me on Barnes was that I thought we were going to get a big Scottie Barnes discount this year after he was bad last season. Missed 17 games. He was number 63 in 9 category leagues. Better than that. He was 46 and 8 cat. But we didn't get a discount at all. He's still going in the mid to late second round, which is where he went last year and then disappointed everybody. I do think Scottie has a better field goal percent shooting year this coming season. I think there's a chance that the free throw percent also ticks back up. I don't believe that the blocks, not from this year, but the big block season when he was at 1.5, that always felt like it was a little bit of an outlier. This 1 block a game is probably more like what you should expect out of him. He also has extra teammates that demand the basketball. So I prefer Scottie Barnes as a mid to late third rounder. So yes, I passed over Donovan Mitchell to take Kevin Durant, but I'm going Donovan Mitchell in the head-to-head battle with Scottie Barnes. I think Donovan is on the way up. I think Scottie is also a little bit on the way up from last year, but down from where he was 2 seasons back, which gives me confidence in Donfidence. Okay, I've passed over Scottie Barnes now. What about when Scottie Barnes goes toe-to-toe in an ADP battle with Jaylen Brunson? How do we deal with this one? Because those guys, and I said I would get back around to them at some point, would you go either of these guys in the second round? And the answer is no. I don't want them as second rounders. My choice, skip them if you can. If you had to pick one, which you don't, but if you had to, the old expression is gun to the head, but I hate that expression. It's probably Scottie Barnes because I expect, the bounce back and there is upside with Barnes, where with Brunson, you know exactly what you're going to get, which is efficient scoring and assists, but very little else. Brunson is almost definitely going to end up right around top 50 in 9 category leagues. And Barnes could be anywhere from 25 to 65. So whatever, like in this instance, you could take the swing. I would prefer to pass them both over and go to whoever is at the front end of the third round, which I have this little remark towards the end of the show now about the 3 players that I kind of passed over, those being Alperen Sengun, Scottie Barnes, and Jaylen Brunson. So I would, as I talked just about Barnes and Brunson a moment ago, lump Sengun in with those guys, and I would generally pass those dudes over in the second round, and instead, I would consider some of the names like Steph Curry, like Kevin Durant, and others, that are going at the beginning of the third round, and I'd prefer those dudes now back in the second round. Names like Jaylen Johnson. If you think he stays healthy all year, I think that dude is a second rounder. Chet Holmgren is probably a second rounder this year. After you get through those dudes, now you start to look back at someone like a Scotty Barnes, and he's a maybe, because I don't want LaMelo Ball there. I don't want Siakam there. I don't think I want De'Aaron Fox there. I don't want Jaylen Brown there. Maybe you go Amen Thompson before you loop back around to Scotty Barnes. And I think I'm like, to me, Jalen Brunson should continue to go down the board until you get out of the guys with a little bit more kick to them. But I would consider, let's see, what number is Jaylen Johnson if you did it that way? Devin Booker was 12, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 29th? I think he's 29th if you line him up. So Jaylen Johnson is 29th in the batting order, but I'd look at him at 23, 22, 23. Kevin Durant is more like 24th. Like we said, we're looking at him more like 18. So Harden, Steph, LeBron, Maxey, Kevin Durant. We talk about anybody else that I was higher on, and then guys like Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Johnson. These are the guys to me. Oh, Evan Mobley too, and Jalen Williams. Those are the guys, slot those in ahead of the last two names, that belong to me in the second round. There's 3 or 4 guys going in the second that I think are in the wrong round. And hopefully that will help you guys make a plan on how you want to cruise through round 2. Your ADP battles all locked in together. There you go. Managed to squeeze this one in under a half an hour, which is pretty amazing. I forgot to mention, however, during the show that I am now sponsored by our friends at Fantrax. Go to fantrax.com/oldmansquad and sign up for a totally free account. You can play all their fantasy games for free. Nothing you do over there requires you to pay money unless you want to be in a paid league. And guess what? I do. But you don't have to handle the money. Are you tired of being the treasurer and tracking everybody down? Guess what? Fantrax can handle that for you. They don't actually get to do anything in the league until they drop their coin in the bucket. So the coins all go in the bucket. Fantrax pushes it out at the end of the year. Make your life easy. Fantrax is the place to go for commissioners in fantasy sports. It has the most commissioner tools of any spot on earth. It is just fantastic for running leagues. I'll admit to you guys, I've said it before, I think the user interface could use a little bit of a tune-up, but overall, it is the best place to play fantasy basketball. If you can just change the way you operate on a day-to-day basis, that's the spot. Again, that's fantrax.com/oldmansquad. Thank you to FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook for their continued partnership here. Like, rate, subscribe on the way out. Let's keep growing this bad boy. We're almost at 8,000 now. I want to get over 10 this season. I feel like I should be able to do it, but who knows? It's going to require you guys joining up on this insane boat ride. At Dan Bespers on social media. I'm starting to post stuff over there now, and next week it'll ramp up a lot more as I have a nanny again. Yay! Dan isn't doing all the childcare himself. I'm really wearing out, but boy, I'm keeping it in high gear for the kiddos. But Little League starts, so, time disappears there. Now, both of my kids, both of those rapscallions are playing Little League baseball. Shout out to all of you guys. You're the best. This is ADP Battles Round 2. Round 3, 4 we'll probably do at some point here in the not-too-distant future. I haven't decided what order I want to do them in. Probably doesn't matter to you guys anyway. One or another. See you soon.